This episode of The Energy Show is proudly sponsored by Sunlight and Power, the Bay Area's leading commercial and residential solar contractor. SLP has been designing and installing photovoltaic, battery backup, and solar thermal solutions since 1976. Help fight climate change. Go solar with Sunlight and Power today.
So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, if you haven't heard, there's a big contraction going on in the solar industry. Many states are eliminating solar installation incentives, like California, which killed net metering in 2023, and Arizona and North Carolina and other states. They're just legislating policies that cut back on solar, or the regulators, for whatever reason, usually bad reasons, are cutting back on solar. So as a result, here in California, installations have dropped by 80%. The higher interest rates make it harder to finance solar, and that's affecting everybody around the country. In California, 17,000 jobs were lost just over the last 6 months. Hundreds of solar companies around the country are going out of business, or sometimes they stay in business, but they leave the states that they used to be working in. So there's companies that are still very active around the country, but they've left California. And it's ironic because we need rooftop solar more than ever. It makes tremendous economic and environmental sense. But people are kind of caught, and sometimes they're in the middle of an installation, or they already have solar, or they already have storage, and their solar installer, if they need service, they're not answering the phone. Or there's an issue that's going on with the battery, or they want to add on to the system. So what do you do? So for some answers about the issue is when your solar installer is not returning your phone calls, it's my pleasure to introduce Geoff Greenfield at Kokosing Solar. Now, Geoff is one of the long-timers in the industry. He's been in solar since 2001 when he founded Third Sun Solar. And on his LinkedIn profile, he's got the tan and the shades to prove it. Although, today we're indoors and you see his forehead like you can see on mine. Now, Third Sun is now Ohio's leading full-service solar installer, both for residential and commercial. And Kokosing is a large Midwest construction company, and they were seeing the synergies between the demand for solar, demand for rooftop solar, demand for commercial and utility solar, and then construction companies that really have the facilities, the people, and the procedures to do that. And what really captured my eye is Geoff recently published a blog post entitled, "What to Do When Your Solar Installer Goes Out of Business." So I reached out to Geoff, and he's gracious enough to join us on today's podcast. So looking forward to Geoff's advice, and welcome to the show, Geoff.
Hey, thanks, Barry. And it's great to finally be on the Energy Show. I've followed you for years and met you way, way, way back when we were both younger people. And it's a sad, sad situation that a lot of customers are finding themselves in. And a lot of good solar companies also are facing some struggles that are a big challenge.
That is kind of an emotional issue because people put their heart and soul in this business. They're trying to do the right thing, and then they find out that for some reason, for some policy reason, they can't do the right thing. It can be really devastating. I got a lot of upset people. But we'll see where it goes. But you're a success story in Ohio. Tell us a little bit about how you're working with Kokosing Solar, what markets, products. Tell me a little bit about the business now.
Yeah. It's a several decades long overnight success. But yeah, we started solar. My wife, Michelle, is a co-founder, and the two of us started, 24 years ago, and kind of rode the solar coaster, as we all talk about, with some ups and downs, and just kept on going and kept growing and hiring good people and building a team. So Third Sun Solar is now Kokosing Solar. I'll talk a little bit about that, but right now we're a design build company. We're a self-performing company, which is something different than we used to be. For large projects, we used to subcontract. And we serve the residential market here in Ohio and kind of right around on the border. And then we serve commercial and industrial clients, community solar, and even larger ground mounts. We're not going after the 100 megawatt projects just yet, but we are doing larger projects than we used to be able to do. We run throughout the Midwest and all the way down into the Mid-Atlantic, and are focused on solar and now, storage, as well as some larger kind of industrial scale, battery energy storage systems for private customers, developers, public entities, and of course, utilities. And anybody that wants to hire us, we'll take a good look at the opportunity and hopefully be able to work together. My wife and I drove to Ohio from Portland, Oregon for a 1-year graduate program in international affairs, and fell in love with the area and started making friends. And my wife got a great opportunity, so we decided to settle down, and we were building a house. So it's a classic. We wanted a solar system for our as green as we could build it house, and there were no providers back then. And so we ordered stuff from Real Goods catalog and in the back of Home Power magazine, and I kind of cobbed it all together, broke all sorts of National Electrical Code rules that I didn't know I was breaking. And we lived on a 24-volt off-grid system for many years, and it grew as our loads grew. And anyway, that's another story. But when people read about us in the paper and wanted to learn more about solar, they wanted some help with their system. And I was doing affordable housing development with a nonprofit and started to moonlight doing solar on the weekends, and then got serious about it in the year 2000.
Wow. It's amazing. So how has the market been in the territories in Ohio? Has it been stable, up or down like California? What's the demand? And also in different market segments.
Yeah. Ohio has very low-cost conventional energy, historically from coal, now primarily from natural gas. But I talked to my friends at solar and in other markets, and effectively, you're always competing with the status quo. And our energy costs are, down for industrial customers, down in the 5 to 10 cent range. And for residential customers, it's in the low teens. So that said, it's always been a slow and mediocre market. Got some sun, but it's not as sunny as San Diego. And so most of our customers historically have been folks that are environmentally motivated or techies that really want it for a variety of reasons. And then the economics are there, but it wasn't nearly as hot as some of the subsidized markets. So when the subsidies go away in those markets, they crash hard, or when the interest rates rise, they crash hard. For us, it's been relatively stable, although we did see a slowdown from our planned growth, in this last 2023 year.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of brings up a subtle point that after the net metering rules were dramatically changed in California, the payback's still probably better in California than it is in Ohio. So that's kind of what we have to grapple with as installers, is we were selling one way and now the economics aren't as good, but they're still pretty good. And what that essentially does is it just flattens out, or in this case, it's caused a collapse in the growth. And I think a lot of that is just due to the business models of the companies that have been here. And then when things change, they can't really readjust. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when companies aren't answering the phone. Let's talk a little bit about your blog post and what you observed.
Yeah. Well, it's tied in. You mentioned business models and, how some companies are still, going, just not going as hot and heavy. But I think that for a while over the last couple of years, we saw some pretty aggressive sales tactics. We saw some deceptive advertising. We saw some, low cost or at least low quality corners cut on the materials and the ways and means. And I think that's that kind of like blip. Some folks are referring to this as the solar bros after the magazine article. That kind of an aggressive, fast growth, and then run out and go to the next marketplace when things go south. That's bad for all of us. It's certainly bad for the consumer. We get terrible, terrible phone calls from folks that are just left stranded. And so this happened in Ohio. They came in, a big, large company that is, out of business and changed their name and is blaming a manufacturer for their problems.
Is that, did the company start with P?
That was the name they changed their name to. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, fascinating to watch it all happen. But the sad situation is that there's plenty of good people that wanted to go solar, wanted to save money, wanted to have clean energy. And they started calling us with systems that were installed but not working, or mid-install but not completed, or had been working, but inevitably solar, does need some service. At least a percentage of the systems eventually will need some service. And so we had been busy focusing on new construction and servicing our existing customers, and had historically had a policy of not taking on customers from other companies. In our sales process, it's a differentiator. We tell people, hey, we've been doing this for 23 years, and we've got a service team. So should something need service, or eventually your roof is going to need to be replaced, et cetera, we're there for you. And I guess selfishly or for business reasons, we just decided, let's keep that differentiator to ourselves. And I'll have to tell you that it was one of my colleagues, Roberta, who's fielding a lot of these phone calls. It was like the 10th sweet little old lady who just wanted her system to run. She was just advocated so strongly that we need to support these people. We can't let these folks be orphans any longer. So we talked to a lot of peers and friends. We talked to some lawyers about what are the risks of taking on a service agreement for something that you didn't build, something that possibly was done with shoddy construction. And eyes wide open, we kind of came up with a plan to say, hey, we'll take a look at your system. We'll do our best. We're going to document what we find. We're going to legally protect ourselves, and we're going to charge money for this. This is, a service that we're going to charge for. People loved it. They were happier than I would have expected to pay pretty good money to get their system back up and running, or at least get questions answered that were never answered by their original installer. And it felt good on our end as well to, just like when you're installing and you throw the switch and you're, witnessing some families' dreams come true. In this case, you're turning a switch back on and the system's back up and running, and there's a sigh of relief, and you know that you're helping somebody out.
Yeah, we've been experiencing the same thing in the past slowly, but now that there's so many more companies not answering the phone, we get a good number of service calls for people saying, hey, my installer's out of business, or they're not answering the phone. And we advertise that we provide service, and we will then try and find out what's going on the phone. We'll send a technician out. We'll charge some money to do a system check. And, we almost always fix it. And if we can't fix it, if it's really old equipment, we'll just recommend the intelligent change. You need new modules, you need new racking, you need a new roof. We'll do an R&R. And that's working out well. And the main reason we do it, it's not really a tremendously profitable thing, candidly, unless there's an upsell. You kind of break even on it, but we're just doing the right thing for customers. And we don't want people, just like that little old lady who's complaining. We get a lot of those calls, and we bend over backwards to try and fix them. The place where it's trickiest for us is when they're this installer was in the middle of an installation, and then they disappear. And then they might have had plans drafted at the building department, and we got to kind of get into that. But we always try our best.
Yeah, it's case by case. Yeah, taking on something that's mid-installation can be pretty tricky as well, because then effectively you're taking on a lot more liability. We've not yet done that, completed projects or powered some projects up. But yeah, I can imagine that, especially if something's already registered in the permit process with the AHJ with one provider, it's probably a lot of work to pick that up and switch to a new provider to take it to the finish line. Yeah,
where we draw the line is if equipment was installed that we're not familiar with. We're not going to, learn all the engineering and the software about some new battery system if it's not something that we've been historically doing. And there's usually reasons why we weren't using that battery system, just because maybe there was some bugs or whatever. But it'd be interesting. What are some of the reasons why these solar companies close? Obviously you're a survivor, we're surviving, but why are some of the companies just not making it?
Yeah, business is hard. It's hard to do a simple business, and solar is not simple. So I guess you could just probably put it all down to unsustainable business practices. Some of the things that we've seen for the companies that come into our market and then either wind down quickly or exit is that they had really invest a lot in marketing. They're spending a whole lot of money on trying to achieve hyper growth and generating lots and lots of leads. And sometimes the marketing approach is kind of a promise promise the impossible kind of an approach. You see these ads for free solar and the government will pay you money to go solar, and, highly deceptive. In my experience, when someone clicks on one of those ads, fills out the form and gets the call, it's usually not a good conversation when they find out that, in fact, they have to pay the money up front and then they can get, some money back, et cetera. So setting people up with a real aggressive marketing expectation is not, I don't believe, a sustainable way to do business. The other piece is super highly compensated, 100% commission sales agents. Many of these folks are poorly trained, or if they are trained, they're trained in, I think, deceptive practices. And I call them the hard closers. We have stories of people getting calls because someone won't leave their kitchen. It blows my mind to think about being in that situation. I think that those companies, they talk to 100 people, maybe they can get 10 or 15 people to say yes. And maybe that's their business model, but it's not a sustainable one. It's not one that's built to last for decades and be built on reputation and referrals. It's built on trying to force somebody into a quick decision based on, some fast talking and deceptive practices. I think it's inevitable that those folks are going to be flash in the pan and come and go quickly.
Yeah. I mean, we see that too. And there's just, when the salesperson is compensated, basically whatever money they want to take off the table over $3 a watt, which would be like a basic system, they could sell a system for $5 a watt. And I remember stories about one of our salespeople like 8 years ago came to us, wanted to get a different job, 10 years ago, I think. And he said he was selling solar. And, the price that he sold the system for was, $20,000. And I said, well, that's okay. How many solar panels did you sell? 10. I'm like, you were selling them at like $9 or $10 a watt. Well, that's just, how I could make the most money, and I didn't feel right about it. So there's that whole unethical thing. And ironically, the flip side of it is that the natural reaction among many companies that aren't really value-based, that aren't selling the company, is that they just lower the price. So in the example that you were talking about, where somebody clicks on a lead, it may be a lead gen company, and they throw it out. It's a jump ball to 3 or 4 companies who want to be most aggressive and low price. How do you see that affecting satisfaction of customers? And how does that low price impact a company's ability to stay in business?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that back to staying in business. Obviously, there's definitely people gouging a customer and being unscrupulous on that end. And there's also folks operating unsustainably on the low end of that. Quality equipment costs a little bit more than the cheapest stuff you can buy, A. And B, quality people cost a little bit more. And especially the folks up on your roof drilling holes in your roof, I would rather have that person be a well-compensated, well-trained person who likes the company they work with, been there for years, preferably with benefits. That's how we roll. And the race to the bottom approach, there's traveling subcontracting companies that are working 70 or 80 hours a week. I have no idea what their quality of life is like. I don't think that they're doing quality work in that 75th hour of the week. There's a lot of safety issues. In the intro, you didn't mention, Barry, that I'm a board member of NABCEP, the National North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. And we're all about quality. We're all about certification, and we're all about standards. And when you have a business model that's based on the lowest cost and subcontracting it out, sometimes with multiple tiers of subcontractors, you lose the quality, you lose the safety. We see all sorts of crazy things done to get a job done quicker that obviously don't last. And that's the reason we're there, trying to get the system back up and running.
Yeah, 2 examples that I saw at the same company. And this was a white label, 2 white vans pulled up. They were doing an installation at this house I was actually riding on my way back to work. And it was under the banner of one of the big national solar installers. But, they're there. And I just stopped my bicycle, waved to them, hi, great, you're installing solar. And I noticed inside the van, they had a stack of solar panels with the white backsheet up. So the glass was down, the white back sheet was up. It's okay. But the guy was in the truck walking on the back of the solar panels with his boots to access the things in the truck. So every time they took out another solar panel, he was crushing the wafers and the cells. And those panels will definitely not perform well. And then second, you look at what they're using for a roof. They're not using real flashings. They're using, mini flashings that are probably well attached if you hit the rafter right in the center. But if you miss that a little bit, which happens when you're in a hurry, and these people are probably going to do 2 jobs that day, that installation is going to fail pretty quickly. The output's going to be low, and they're going to have roof leaks, and it kind of kills me. But you're kind of coming back to the pace of growth. You've been building Third Son and Kokosing the same way. It's like you can grow 20 or 30% a year. It's gradual. You're growing based on referrals, and you're not dumping a ton of money into marketing to grow really fast, and you're maintaining your profits as you grow. And that's the sustainable way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. It's, again, back to a business practice and a mindset. There are a lot of people that want to get rich quick in the solar business. And gosh, I think it was David Katz who first told me this old joke about if you want to make a small fortune in the solar business, the best way is to start with a large fortune. But joking aside,
but David's done very well, but he did it the other way very well, and he's doing it the second time with his racking company. So it's the good people in the solar industry that are surviving, and they have a reputation. You've got the ethics like you've established, and being on the board of NABCEP's terrific. That really makes a big difference, and that's something that can come across to customers when your salespeople are talking. They know the company's been around.
Right. Now that said, not everybody can start 20 years ago, and there's people that are getting the solar bug and want to be part of this, and they want to start a company right now. So they can't start with their reputation that they've built over time, but they got to start somewhere, and you've got to start with quality. You got to start with customer service and doing the right thing. And it's one customer at a time, and you can build. I think people can start a business today in clean energy, clean tech, and find a way to find a niche and serve it and build a business based on ethics and doing the right thing. But the get rich quick, overnight success, kind of internet bubble mentality, unfortunately, I think we've been kind of trained that that's an expectation. I talk to entrepreneurial student groups, and some of them have, I think, ideas that, it's just as easy as inventing an app and then you're a billionaire. And maybe that happens, but business can and should be a phenomenal thing to do, and find a way to differentiate and innovate and do something better, faster, cheaper, provide great customer service, and contribute. But that leads to long, steady, hopefully growth, sometimes some downtimes too. We've had some serious bad years or multiple bad years. The 2008 recession, no one was buying a luxury like solar when they weren't sure if they were going to be employed next week. So there's up times and down times, and you better sock away some money to be able to take you and your team through the low points.
Well, talking about new people coming into the industry, and they're not going to have that 20-year background or that reputation. The good thing about our industry is it's not just solar, it's solar and storage. It's going to evolve, but it's going to require the same expertise. And, I'm consistently finding new people coming into the industry that they see this is going to grow for 20 or 30 years. That's very encouraging. But I'm thinking back to 2008, there was a company called Sunrun that kind of got started around 2006 or 7. And, they really started doing well in 2008. So there's opportunities there. But I don't know of any overnight successes. Companies that, just snap their fingers. I mean, there's some companies that have an asset-light model like Aurora. They don't have trucks, but they have a lot of IP, and it's very expensive. So, but potentially tremendous growth potential. Solar, storage, electrification, all those services that your company, my company, provides is good going forward. But tell me a little bit about how you do your training of your salespeople and your people on the roof, their technicians.
Yeah. So we do our training in-house. We hire entry-level positions and train, and most of our people have been promoted. Senior designer, was on the roof and has the ability to really communicate with all the people on the team about ways and means and buildability, and understands all the different factors of design. We didn't touch on this earlier. So we were acquired by Kokosing almost 2 years ago. Kokosing is a union contractor in the Midwest where we operate, And so it's opened the doors to a huge amount of training resources and apprenticeship resources that we didn't have in the past. On top of that, they've been doing complex industrial large projects for 72 years. So they've built some systems internally that we were trying to build as a small mom and pop. So it's one of the reasons we did the deal, is to really tap into some of the stuff that they've built that serves us just the same way it serves a larger construction company. So there's basically training for the O&M techs. Most of them have to install. They've got to be up on the roof. They work their way up throughout the conventional install teams. And if they want a room to grow, one of the options to grow, if becoming a leader for a team is one option, stepping into a project management role is another option. But a lot of these folks like to be hands-on, and they are kind of methodical, logical thinkers. And so stepping into the service and O&M role is a good spot. On top of that, then, we use Solar Energy International, SEI. They have, to my knowledge, today, one of the best service-focused training modules. There might be others. I know that there's some that are coming as well, because we've got an aging fleet out there. We've got more and more of the stuff that needs to be serviced and serviced safely. Additionally, we are part of the Amicus Solar Operations and Maintenance Cooperative. So we're an owner, a co-owner, along with other member companies of that cooperative. And so that gives us additional resources for training as well as technical support.
And you've got NABCEP, which you're on the board of, and that's a great way to really become an expert in the solar industry.
Right. NABCEP doesn't offer the training itself, but it works on basically the test and effectively develops the curriculum. So there's lots of accredited training providers that are training to the test, and NABCEP has some new credentials rolling out. It used to be just the installer, and then there's the technical sales. And now we've got credentials for inspector, credentials for operations and maintenance and service, credentials for energy storage. So as technology evolves, NABCEP's evolving as well. So there's, good training out there. But at the end of the day, I think in the trades and in solar, the best training is to be part of a company that has experience and to be able to phone a friend. It happens. We've got an open door policy here, and I hear phone rings and somebody's calling in from the field describing a situation, and suddenly there's three people huddled around a computer trying to work through. Well, what if you do this? It could be a ground fault. Try this. What if you isolate that string? Try this. And so there's a lot of kind of inherent knowledge that we've all built up over time that we can kind of bring to a specific problem to get a system back up online.
Yeah, I'm smiling because that kind of expertise is something that you really can't train. It's just absorbed through experience. And so the hardest thing for us to do is find the technicians that can go out and troubleshoot an old SMA system or figure out what to do with, an old battery that's no longer working properly, or upgrading an existing array on the roof with a new inverter. And, you got to know those calculations. It's pretty tricky. And kind of circling back to what do you do when your solar installer is not answering the phone? Well, you're going to have to find a company that has technicians that know how your existing system works. And that's a little bit of a challenge. There are very, very few and far between people that can do that.
Yeah, the bad news is that residential solar's hitting a downturn. The good news is that for these folks with orphan systems, it's more likely that someone's going to take on their work. I think when you've got, 100 people and you want to keep them running towards installing a big system, you don't say yes to the service calls. But if you've got 100 good people and they're not all busy right now because solar's in a slowdown, I think shifting over to keeping systems up and running as well as expanding systems is a smart business move. And I think it's good news for the folks that need service. It's more likely that they're going to get some support today than they would have 2 years ago.
Yeah. So speaking of those people, what advice do you have for a homeowner or a business owner that's looking for somebody to service their system? What do you do? How do you search for that?
Right. In the olden days, you get on the internet and you look it up, or you get in the Yellow Pages. Right now, you get on the internet, you're going to get 500 hits. And I'd say 450 of those hits are lead gen companies from out of state or overseas that probably are not going to want to service you at all. So instead of that, I would recommend that you start with local. If you know somebody that has solar, find out who installed it and if they're happy with that work. And most states have a SEIA chapter. So maybe you can find out the SEIA state or regional members and start with that list, or contact somebody at that chapter for a referral. The Better Business, BBB, Better Business Bureau, is a searchable database where you can find out people that are at least confident enough about their business practices that they'll be accredited. And that's a good approach. And with all these folks, you want to find out, how long they've been in business, whether or not they have policies, written policies or written warranties, et cetera. Are they, fully trained? Do they have a licensed electrician on staff? That's the other problem we didn't really talk to about a lot of these subcontracted relationships is there's no electrical license holder at the business. Some states require that, but other states allow someone to sub it out. And my end of the day, you're dealing with high voltage, potentially dangerous equipment in someone's house, which is most often their biggest, fixed asset. I think safety is critical. We don't want solar to cause a problem. We want solar to solve a problem. And then, of course, I'd recommend NABCEP. If you go to the NABCEP website, you can actually look up the installers by state and get some contacts that way as well.
Good. All right. Well, let's get close to wrapping up. You've been in solar a long time. What do you do for fun?
Oh, geez. I love to get out in nature. Originally, I got into solar because I'm an environmentalist. At the end of the day, there's nothing more magic to me than being amongst the trees and being, the air smells different in a forest. So I love to mountain bike. I love to ski. I love to hike and camp. Now that I'm getting older, everyone tells me I should be playing golf, but I found disc golf. That's my latest hobby. So I'm getting into disc golf, which is kind of like being in nature, but you're walking around with some friends, getting frustrated, trying to throw a piece of plastic at a metal basket.
Yeah, just got to build up that blister on your middle finger.
Maybe we'll play someday, Barry.
Yeah. It's been a while for me. All right. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Jeff, terrific discussion. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you missed any of today's show, you can always go to the Energy Show website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.
This episode of The Energy Show was proudly sponsored by Sunlight and Power, the Bay Area's leading commercial and residential solar contractor. SLP has been designing and installing photovoltaic, battery backup, and solar thermal solutions since 1976. Help fight climate change. Go solar with Sunlight and Power today.